We recently connected with an amazing teacher named Poe, who is out of Portland, and we have our fingers crossed that he'll soon be here. And how he speaks about tea is as this vibrational medicine. And for me, it's totally transformed this experience of imbibing tea. I think what's really interesting is that in so many cultures, there's this tradition of imbibing some kind of liquid or amrita or sacred substance in order to literally integrate it into the body, into the vessel. So you're not just absorbing through, sound or vision, you're actually bringing it into the interior of the physical temple, the one that we always are in, right? Or most of the time at least. I feel that it's really special to orient oneself around this idea that tea is a vibrational medicine that has a resonance that just enlivens me so much. And almost, I'm hesitant to use this word because it, supposes a polarity, but it almost sanctifies it in a sense that it brings me to presence. I don't care for this distinction between the sacred and the mundane because I don't believe that there is truly a distinction. But what I think sanctifies a practice is our presence. So when we're present with the tea, there's a whole world that's able to open up to us subliminally. What's been coming through again and again, and I feel a bit of a broken record on this, is that love is, in my understanding and my visions of the world, it's actually the material that's an actual vibration that holds all of this together. That spaciousness between electrons, between atoms, everything, the binding force is love. And it's interesting because one could argue that love has a binary in hate, right? Or division, or whatever it is that pulls us from unity. And I think that is one variation of love, perhaps, that has that duality. But the original, the source, origin, God frequency, in my mind, is a pure, undifferentiated love. Because it loves all. It allows all to exist. It allows hate to exist. It allows love to exist. But that differs from the divine love, right? The divine love embraces all, rejects none. It extends love to those that we call evil or have a maleficent spirit. It extends love to those who have caused so much harm. And in my map of the world, love is a resource that we can call upon, pull upon freely. It has no cost. Truly, it has no cost. You don't need to sacrifice. You don't need to truly sacrifice anything to be able to move in love. Because when you move in love, the world opens up to you in ways that you can't even anticipate. When you're able to orient your thoughts your words, your actions, your responses, your value systems, your beliefs, from a place of love, there's a blossoming, there's an opening. And whether or not that's reflected in the material realm, I would argue is a bit arbitrary at this point in human evolution. Because it's reflected in our perception of the world. It's reflected in the way that we arrange the particulars, right? We arrange the stimulus. And so if we can look on to things that make us uncomfortable, things that we judge, that we deem unworthy, that we demonize, even people who have committed gross atrocities, if we can extend them love because we recognize that they are operating from a place of poverty of love. Mm-hmm. And if we could do that collectively, I mean, maybe I'm optimistic or in my own kind of fantastical realm, but I truly believe that we would be able to really shift evolution. We'd be able to ascend to these fifth dimension that I feel that I've heard so much about. But the forces that, and this is a sad reality, the forces that govern our world right now don't have a self-interest in this kind of unity and love. Because what feeds them, these more parasitic natures, who we still extend love to, right? Mm-hmm. But what feeds them, what sustains them, what allows them to persevere on the world stage is division. It's perpetuating the notion of duality. Mm-hmm. If we truly recognized that unity, that love underpins all, we would no longer be giving our vital life forces away to sustain those who wish to sow division. Mm-hmm. And so it's an interesting experience, an experiment, when you're faced with people who have caused so much harm. And you tell others we need to extend love to them. But there's something about it that we must understand that love comes in so many forms. It doesn't mean to just roll over, show your tummy, say, I love you, I love you, I love you so much, and it all goes away. I mean, that would be beautiful, right? That'd be wonderful. But love has so many different faces. And love can have claws, right? Like the wolf mama. Mm-hmm. How does she train her cubs? It's not through coddling them, that's for sure. But the difference is you have to look at the intention that's motivating the action, that's motivating the words. Outwardly, the wolf mom could maybe look a bit aggressive, or that she's like attacking her children. But she doesn't actually cause them gross harm. She's teaching them a lesson. Mm-hmm. But what's motivating that? She's motivated by seeing their survival, by seeing their evolution, their growth into pups who can become wolves, who can sustain themselves in this ecosystem. And so yes, love has many different faces. And when you're acting in this way, it's truly an act of compassion. Because when you're motivated by the love, when your intention is the love, that's the kind of karmic reaction that's going to create the boomerang that comes back.
There are studies that have been done. I think they were done by David Hawkins, who's the one who has the spectrum of consciousness. I know that he's done studies where you take one healthy egg, and you're not healthy without love, right? So you could just say one egg that's been loved.
Mm-hmm.
And you put all of these other eggs around it that are sick, that are not well.
Mm-hmm.
And the power of that one healthy egg vibrating at the frequency of love creates health in all of the other eggs. And so we don't need every single person on this planet to be embodying the level of love that you're speaking to see this shift happen.
Yes.
That's what gives me so much hope, is through us moving through the world with love in whatever way that looks like for us, knowing that the way that each person channels love is going to look different, from person to person. For me, for example, I tend to be in that tough love role a lot. That doesn't mean that I don't also express and channel these other forms of love as well. But if each of us are channeling love in the way that we feel called to, that feels natural to us, that feels like it expands our heart and our body to be channels for energy from beyond. I don't know what the statistics are. I know that there are statistics out there, but I think it's something like only 30% of the planet would need to be doing this to create this massive shift.
I actually believe, and I hope I'm not misquoting this, but I believe that Ashiana Dean said it was 8%.
Only 8.
That's the thing about it, is there's a faith in it.
Mm-hmm.
And as my dad explained it to me as a kid and through growing up, is that as much faith as we have is as little doubt or discourage or discomfort that we have. As much doubt as we have is as little faith as we have. And what happens when we understand these as polarities is that we understand them as vibrating on the same spectrum. Right? In the Kabbalion, the principle of polarity states, opposites are identical in nature, they just differ in degree. Meaning that they exist on the same continuum, there's just a difference in the degree at which they vibrate, right? And so how I picture it is that doubt and discomfort, let's say it's living on my left hand, it's in a really dense vibration. It doesn't have much space to go anywhere.
Yeah, there's not a lot of movement.
So it creates this kind of molasses, this stagnation, this atrophication of energetic potential. Versus when you move towards the degree of faith, and perhaps there's a better word for it, you're given a spaciousness. Because and faith differs from hope. Right? I think it was I really like this quote. I believe it went along the lines of this. Someone had asked Carl Jung if he believed in God. And he says, I don't believe in God. I know God. Mm-hmm. And what a difference that is. Mm-hmm. To believe versus to know. And so perhaps I play it down because I want it to be more palatable, or I want you to be able to suspend disbelief with me. But I know for a fact that operating from this place of love could transform the world.
Will transform the world.
Yeah, will transform the world. And if it is this kind of real small populace that could elicit this enormous change, then we are being called upon to rise to the occasion. And it doesn't mean that you have to operate at it 100%, right? We're human. We're going to mess up. And we can't get down on ourselves for that. We always have to extend grace. That we make the best decisions that we know how in that moment. But we can also pull a page, right, out of Viktor Frankl's teachings. And again, I'm not going to recite this quote verbatim, but I'll try to be true to his essence. That freedom lives between the stimulus and the reaction. What that means is that we're able to create space between stimulus and reaction in order to respond. Reaction has this kind of fiery, unconscious, knee-jerk reaction, right? But when we're able to create a space between it, and we can say, hey, this isn't actually personal. Whatever I say is triggering me, it's not personal. It's not about me. And if I can operate from that modality, can I create a spaciousness that allows me to consciously respond? And when I mean consciously respond, I mean respond from a place of love, right? So it can be tough love. It can have claws. But the intentionality is love.
I love that you are focusing on the word respond, response, responsibility.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That this is our personal responsibility to
Absolutely.
cultivate the ability, cultivate the awareness to be able to not react when things that trigger us or things that we don't like come into our sphere.
Mm-hmm.
I'd love for you to speak a little bit more on the personal responsibility piece as it comes to moving through the world with love.
So, my background, I studied Tibetan Buddhism, and how it was explained to me and how it's always stuck with me. And let's be very clear, when I was really first introduced to this, it sounded lovely, but it was really hard to integrate. So no matter where you find yourself in the world, extend yourself love and grace and the possibility of an evolution of consciousness. That being said, how it was explained is that every thought, word, action plants a seed in the karmic garden. So if you plant an apple seed, you're not going to grow an orange tree. Similarly, if you plant a seed of anger, you're not going to grow a tree of love, right? Like begets like. And so it can start small. It can start so small. I remember I was in New York City when I was learning this, and how they said it was, when you're walking through this city, instead of just having your headphones on, looking at the sidewalk, just trying to get from point A to point B in the fastest, most momentous way, look up and make eye contact with people and send them a smile. Because you don't know who might need it. So many times I remember walking around New York City and seeing people just cry. What is more loving, or what feels so good than when you feel that you're in a place where you're all alone, yet surrounded by people who aren't paying you any attention, than to have that one person recognize you as a human being who's in a difficult experience.
Mm-hmm.
That in itself is love. It's not this radical thing that is really intense and hard to grasp. It's in the little ways. It's asking the cashier at the supermarket you go to what their name is. Honoring them as a human being that you could otherwise just walk by and have no recognition of. It's sending people who are in all phases and cycles of their life a loving thought. And it's being able to do so without having the recognition of doing it. Right? Like if you pray for someone and then you do it from your like whole heart, and then let's say you tell them, are you telling them because you're operating from this place that you want them to know that you thought of them and that they are so loved and that they are so deserving of your energetics, that you fashion this beautiful prayer for them? Or are you operating from a place that says, hey, I'm so thoughtful that I prayed for you? You know what I mean? That has a different resonance. Those are differing seeds in your karmic garden. What's the intention that motivates it? You know, my Buddhism professor in university, this gentleman, Doc Kelly, we were talking about people who jump in front of shooters, live shooters. And we'll have example A and B, right? And the outward action looks the same. That both of these people jumped in front of a live shooter and risked their own life in order to save others. Person A was like, I need to do this. This is the only, like, they were motivated by true love for the other, that they could perhaps play a hand in saving someone's life. Option B, or, person B, was they want to die a hero. And they want to be recognized as heroic. And so, it's not black and white, obviously. It's not to say that person B is completely invested in the self. But if it is in that vein of I want to be recognized and remembered as a hero versus I'm doing this because this is the only way I can respond in this moment for the betterment of all beings, those have different frequencies. They exist on the same continuum. But just like we talked about the density of doubt versus the spaciousness of faith, I believe you could say that true for the others.
Yeah. I love this example because I think we can become overly fixated on the external actions.
Yeah.
And can feel overwhelmed or even disempowered, thinking that, oh, well, I can't show up to the front lines of this protest, or I, can't go volunteer in this homeless shelter, or you don't have space in your life to be able to do those things that seem externally as like good things to do for humanity, right?
Yeah.
But again, you could be going and doing all of those things, but with that inner dialogue
self-aggrandizing.
Right, of, oh, well, I'm going to go volunteer at this homeless shelter and then I'm going to tell everybody about it so everybody thinks that I'm a good person.
Or even I'm going to do it because then I'll think I'm a good person and it'll, you know what I mean? It could also be an inner self-worth. You don't even have to tell the other.
Right.
It's your thoughts at the bedrock of it, right?
Whereas you could just be at home sitting on your couch and be connecting to that love and sending that love to every person on this planet. And that in and of itself is making a significant difference. Even if you can't see externally in your reality as of this moment, I think the more that we connect with that and the more that we begin to emanate that, our external reality does begin to shift and we begin to see these acts of love around us. But that's where I think the kind of discipline and persistence comes in.
I would argue it's devotion.
Devotion.
It's devotion. It's devotion to this potentiality that has already been made manifest. But we need the perception to see it. Right? Perception is a conditioned force that is within each individual. But we're not here to stay fixed. We have a malleable nature. There's a potentiality for the evolution of consciousness when we choose to engage with it.
Thank you for bringing this up. So there's lots of talk about the new earth, right? The new earth, when are we getting there? When is it happening? And it's like the new earth already exists, exactly as you're just saying. It already exists. It's already here. It's all about if we can attune our vision and our perception to see it. That's literally it.
And that's why I actually really, it's ironic because our thing is called Terra Nova, but I don't like the term New Earth because it presupposes that that there's like a newness to it that
Totally.
I think new can be misleading.
1,000%. The reason I use it is because that's what,
Of course, no,
know it as.
100%.
But yeah, it's like that world is already here.
Absolutely.
And we all have the power and the ability to attune our frequency to that world. And at first, our external reality may not reflect that, but with the devotion, with the commitment to attuning our frequency and staying in the frequency of love, that is what opens this world up to us. And so I think really within the broader umbrella of Terra Nova and Seed Sounds and all of the ventures and projects and visions within this community, really what we're seeking to do is just attune people to that vision through coming together. Because when you're off alone, and maybe you live in a place where you're the only person who is on this journey in your immediate environment, and it can feel like you're going crazy, right? Because nobody else around you is seeing what you're seeing. And so conversely, the more that we're connected to people who are attuning their vision to this shared vision, the shared desire for this earth that we're co-creating, there's something just so incredible. It's to me, that's the most powerful force in the universe, right? Is shared intention and coming together around a shared vision. I think that's when we're going to be able to really tune into these superhuman abilities that we have.
Well, and that's the thing, right? It's a magnification.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not to say that you have to be living in close quarters with everyone, right? Because some people, that's not their disposition. But there is a fundamental understanding of a coming together. How frequently? That's free will. You get to determine that. But there is an understanding that as we enter in orbit with one another, the magnetic auric field grows. And I don't actually know the logistics of it, but to me, what one person can do, we'll call that one. When two people come together, that's 4. When 3 people come together, that's 16. I'm using arbitrary numbers, but to me, that's how, in my intuitive understanding of the world, that is how much the magnetic field increases by virtue of being in presence with people who are vibrating at a similar frequency. And we know this. It's not unheard of. It's why you can go to a concert, or you can go to a play, or the theater, or to a protest, or to a political rally, and you feel the energetics of a collective of beings who are coming together, who are sharing an experience.
There's the lower vibration of that, which is the mob mentality, right?
Absolutely.
And so this is something, I'm really happy that you brought this point up, because this is something that we're going to see increasingly as we now move with Pluto and Aquarius. as we're moving fully into the age of Aquarius, these Aquarian themes are playing out in the collective. That is part of what the sign of Aquarius is. It's about the collective mind, right? And so the lower vibration of that collective mind can be this mob mentality, taking over the capital, whatever it is. But I believe that I don't know that we've seen that many examples yet of what the kind of higher vibration of that collective hive mind is. They call it the hive mind, right? And thinking of a beehive, right? It's like everybody is playing their role in a symphony. Everybody is coming together and playing their role, and there is this energy that pervades the hive that coordinates everybody's work, that coordinates everybody's movement. So everybody is just flowing in this beautiful harmony, coming together in this harmonious way. And I feel like that is what I'm calling forward into my reality, into our reality, as we pass this threshold into Pluto and Aquarius. Truly anything is possible when we're tapped into the power of the collective mind, right? I think the collective mind gets so much shit for cult mentality and all of this stuff, but I think there's also just such an incredible potential with that as well. Where this is bringing me is the power of meditation. I'd love for you to share a little bit about your journey with meditation and how you've been able to attune people to these frequencies and to these spaces.
So I did my meditation teacher training. I graduated from it basically a year ago and a week maybe. And it was one of those things that as I did it, I realized that, hey, I stumbled upon a dharmic practice in the sense that it was really intimidating. I was tripping over my words, whatnot. But what happened is that it opened me up to channel. And I remember I was speaking on something in the meditation teacher training, and there were, 70 people there. And I was sitting in the front of the room, and I was speaking in a way that elicited a trance state, completely unaware of it. But I was looking around, and I could see the energetic particles moving, and people were just staring at me, in a sense that they were staring at my soul. And I was looking in their eyes, and it was just, we were in this portal. And at the end, it was all recorded, right? And after I presented, probably 20 people came up to me and were like, wow, that was incredible. You were operating truly from a frequency of love, and we were entranced. Like, you cast a spell on us. And I was kind of wary because I was like, what? I did not do that with any awareness, A. And then B, I was like, wow, I must have said some prophetic shit. Like, I must have been really just channeling something revolutionary. And I remember I went back, and whenever they uploaded the recording, perhaps a few days later, I thought to myself, I have to look at what I said. Because for that many people to come up to me, I must have said something revolutionary. And I watched the recording, and I'm kind of illiterate. I'm not making really much sense of anything. There's nothing profound really in it, And I was watching it, and I was so confused. I was like, wait, this made people come up to me, send me messages for the people that were online? Like, But what I realized in that moment is that this practice of meditation unlocked my voice. And it's not something that I have practiced enough to be able to turn on and off. You know, I'll have these moments of clarity where I know that Source is speaking through me. But all that to say, what I realized is that in that moment, it didn't matter what I was saying because the vibration was that of divine love. And that's what left the impression, and that's what created a unification, and what built so many bridges between me and my peers. And so that's one facet of meditation, what it offered me into coming into my own almost confidence, I would call it, or rather a lack of self-doubt. And just an acceptance of, hey, I'm being called upon to talk today, even if some of this conversation I might be uncomfortable in, not because I'm uncomfortable with the material, but because I'm not totally confident in my articulation of it, in my articulation of something that I feel such high reverence for. I'm like, am I doing this justice? Even though I have a lot more confidence and I've learned how to articulate myself a lot more, there are still those lingering limiting beliefs that pop up in the chasm of my mind, but they're like clouds and I let them go. They talk a lot about that when you're sitting in meditation and you start witnessing your thoughts and how rampant they are. Just allow them to arise as clouds and then allow them to go. Don't grasp onto them and go and run with the story. Just witness the propensity to be this constant generator of noise. And I think that's really the power of meditation. And meditation for me is also a way to create that spaciousness that I talked on with the Viktor Frankl quote. It's in that breath, in that pause before response rather than reaction, that you're really able to become a conscious creator of your reality. And I'm not the first to say this, but I'm going to further the message that meditation is an incredible tool in order to really germinate that first spaciousness. And moreover, it was also the tool that really made visions come online for me, where I started seeing these archetypal impressions. And that's what led me to paint. I have no formal training in painting, and I started getting these visions, and I was instructed to paint them. And if I didn't paint them, I wouldn't be allowed to go to sleep. Like, seriously, I felt the energy coursing through my blood vessels like this pure adrenaline, like speed. I felt like I was on drugs until I sat down and I painted it. So I had this like struggle at first. It was definitely a struggle because I was like, no, I'm not a painter. What am I doing cosplaying this? And what I kind of agreed upon was, okay, I'm not doing this for anyone but myself. This energy needs to move out of the mental sphere into form, and then I can sleep. And what was interesting in that is that it also developed a kind of confidence. An ability to communicate something that is coming from source, collective unconscious, the forces that be, I don't know where, right? And in a way to reanimate art and create a vibrational relationship to archetypal imagery and storytelling. Because what was coming through, sometimes it's just these images or impressions or depictions, but then other times there's a whole mythology that is birthed from them. I was in a meditation and I saw the South Node become a liar. I'm not very well read in astrology beyond the very basics. Even then, I didn't really know what the South and North Node meant beyond like, oh, this is where you came from and that's where you're going, which is a very simplified answer that I think actually kind of does a disservice to it. And so anyways, I was like, okay, well, what's this trying to teach me if the South Node is a liar and the North Node is this bow and arrow? And from that, a story was born, right? Once they were stacked on top of each other, and I realized that it was that lemniscat formation, and right where the 2 points met at the nexus is where we are. That the South Node is the arguable past, that if we try and move back to the lessons that we already learned, we're really dragging our heels on where we're going. Mm-hmm. And then conversely, if we're just grasping and trying to get to the destination of the North Node, it's actually completely futile. Because like the Tao, the North Node is an essence, an energy that continuously eludes you so as to bring you deeper and farther onto your path. Mm-hmm. So real harmonization is found right at that nexus point between this cosmic axis, right? This celestial compass, right? You're not fully north, you're not fully south, you're right in the middle. You're in that sweet spot, that 48 to 52. What came from that is a myth. And we'll publish it somewhere, but there were two protagonists, I think is the right word, and it kind of starts out, I love this line. During the Aeon, when the celestial vault was still accumulating its heavenly bodies, there lived two souls on earth destined to shape cosmic forces. I'm pretty sure it goes something like that.
So good.
And it introduces Serafina, a beautiful, tender girl who lives in the depths of the valley underneath this willow tree and plays the lyre. And in this song, she channels the seraphim, her lineage. That is where her name is derived from, Serafina. And then at the peaks of that valley, in those sunlit peaks, lives a boy named Aurelion with golden hair. And his brethren are the golden rams, which you could go into in its symbology in Greek myth. And it's through this dexterous kind of clambering from one peak to another, because you know the dexterity of these rams, the mountain goats, like you see them scale these impossible cliff sides. And it was through them that he learned how to shoot with precision while embracing forward momentum. Mm-hmm. And as the story goes, the west winds of Zephyrus one night lift Serafina's songs up from the valley to the sunlit peaks where Aurelion lives. And for the first time in his life, he descends, so entranced by her song, with the bow and arrow slung across his back. And Serafina senses a presence in the valley that she's never known. So she pauses her playing. And out of the foliage, with a bit of a ruckus, a boy of golden hair emerges. And she has this beautiful dark hair, cloaked in shadows. And they both tilted their heads at one another. And though they've never been in one another's presence, they saw the string of fate that hung between them, that their meeting was predestined. So the story goes on, and they teach one another. They show one another their tools. Serafina is entranced with the bow and arrow, and Aurelion with her song. And so she almost kind of vulnerably asks, if I show you the deep songs of the lyre, will you teach me the ways of the archer? And right, these are polar practices. One much more passive in stillness, yet pulling from this well that extends beyond anything you can imagine. And the other, this real momentous action. And so they learn one another's crafts. They dance with one another's tools. And towards the end, it becomes a real love story where Hieros Gamos, the alchemical marriage, takes hold, which means the union of opposites. Unity. That these opposing forces are fundamentally one, that they're intertwined. And so they exchange their tools to one another in this act of devotion, in this marriage. And as the story goes, to seal it, Serafina plays a song of the mysteries of old and all of that tenderness, while Aurelion lets loose an arrow into the heavens, and its arc creates this aqueduct of light. And through their union, they are transmuted from a material form, lifted into the heavens to become the celestial compass that we orient our individual spiritual enlightenment journeys upon. And so all this to say that meditation, it's a vehicle for reawakening the deep song within us, the mythos that permeates this realm, and to make these stories personal, to create a mythology that deeply resonates with the beauty of love, of falling in love, while also honoring the celestial principles, while also dealing with this idea of duality, and that these polar forces can intertwine like the double helix of a DNA and create the ladder upon which we ascend. I mean, it's beautiful. It's magnificent. And so I have a lot of gratitude that I must extend to meditation.
I love how you in your words say that you have a very elementary understanding of astrology, and through your own personal desire to understand how these points in the sky impact us here on Earth, it invited you into this creative exploration.
Mm-hmm.
And arguably this whole myth that you just wrote is like more profound than most astrologers that I have listened to their description on the nodes, And the reason I say that is because it's so deeply personal to the way that you experience
Exactly.
these points in the sky. They're not even planets. And that's something I feel so called and so interested in holding space for with you. Let's explore our charts through our own creative process.
Yes.
And see the layers that are revealed to us in that process. We tend to hold so tightly to the things that we've read in books or listened to on podcasts from astrologers and human design teachers and all of that. And just witnessing you move through this whole process of just this like genuine pull to understand these nodes and how they're showing up in your life and then it invited you onto this journey
Yeah.
that then landed in this not only 3 gorgeous paintings, but a beautiful myth to go along with it. It's just so incredible to me, so magical.
I have a really quick point that I'd love to speak to. I think this actually also folds into personal responsibility, is creating our own personal mythology and writing our own books on how to live a good life, on what creates richness in life. Because I think what's quite interesting, and people of all disciplines, of all beliefs have touched on this before, right? But that the world is empty of inherent meaning. And so you have some people who look at that emptiness and they're like, what's the point? I may as well just be dead. There's no meaning. There's no meaning. There's no fundamental meaning. Let's just stew in that for the rest of our days. Others take someone else's word for what meaning is. Mm-hmm. They construct their belief systems entirely on what someone else has said. And nothing is going to be existing in a vacuum. Nothing's original per se. But this evolution of consciousness, this movement from Pisces, where Jesus was our Messiah, right? Where we are waiting for someone else to save us. The Aquarian kind of impetus is recognizing that we have to save ourselves. And I feel like the saving thing kind of is like, oh, what struggle are we going to have to face, right? That's not what I mean. What I mean is that we're being gifted the freedom to write a story that resonates with our soul. We don't have to compromise anything. Mm-hmm. At least, at a philosophical, moral orientation to how we live in the world. And so, just to your point, this kind of relating to the astrological bodies in a creative process. It's why I consider myself unstudied or less articulate in more structured orders of information. It's why I've never had a real profound desire or even proclivity to memorize and learn the systems of astrology, of human design, of gene keys. Actually, you can extend that to probably most studies that I've done. I take what resonates with me and I leave the rest. And I used to be really hard on myself for that. And I used to lament on why my memory was so bad, on why I couldn't retain it, on this perceived lack that I was operating from, that was my conditioned. But even that orientation has the ability to shift. My perception changed. And in doing that, I realized that what resonates sticks. And what isn't my truth in that particular moment, it's not to say it might not come back to me, but what's not my truth in that particular moment is allowed to continue downstream. And so fundamentally, there are many threads that we're tying back together. But as we're writing our own books, I do believe that there are a few universal laws that are ultimate truths, absolute truths, but other than that, that's just my reality. That myth, that's my reality. That's not an absolute truth. Mm-hmm. That's just my way of being able to make sense of something that is so grand. That's how I bring it into form. That's how I ground it into the body. Mm-hmm.
I love this reframe around perceiving things that we have previously criticized ourselves for or thought that there was something wrong with us.
Lacking.
And once we shift that awareness, which I do feel for me, human design has supported me a lot in that, and just truly accepting, oh, this is who I am. And this is the way that I learn. This is the way that I teach. This is the way that I live. This is the way that I move through the world.
Yeah.
And so there is an incredible amount of wisdom that we can glean from these systems to then pull, like you say, like what resonates and then leave what doesn't, to create our own personal mythology. That feels like this path that we're moving away from looking to these teachers and these gurus for answers, and the personal responsibility piece of, yes, of course, like we're still going to do our research and read our books and whatever, but the way that we're interacting with that information is grounded in that inner authority, and that inner sovereignty. And we can begin to notice when we're taking something in and it feels like it shifts our center of power away from the center, then that's a little clue. Oh, that's not for me right now. And I don't need to make up a big story about why. It's just not for me. I don't need to disparage that teacher. I don't need to make a big story about it. That's just not for me right now. But this other thing feels like it amplifies my power. It helps me feel more deeply connected to source and deeply connected to my power source within. And that feels like this just like artful curation, this curative process of then weaving together the masterpiece of your life, right? Like when you're talking about cultivating your own personal mythology, it's really just the story of your life, the
100%.
story of who you are. And to me, there's nothing cooler or more interesting and truly more important. That's truly how we change the world, is through that process. And that's definitely more of the conversations and artists and creatives and entrepreneurs and leaders that we're going to be gathering together in this space. That's really the foundation upon which, the lens through which we're seeking to archive these stories and just create space for people to explore their own personal mythology, owning who we are, standing confidently in who we are and why we're here. To me, those are the two most important questions that we're continually answering every single day through living out this process of just being alive.
As these people are coming into this orbit, into this platform and sharing this story, and I think this is actually a truth that will permeate the age of Aquarius, is that we're moving away from the pedestalization. We're moving away from the guru, the teacher, etc., that presupposes a hierarchy of knowledge that surpasses our own. And what we're seeing, in my opinion, in the kind of leaders of this dawning age, or those who, may affect the masses, is that they lead by example and they don't tell you what to do. I think that's a big thing, is I'm going to live my truth, and if it resonates with you, you can pull bits and pieces from it, but I'm not going to tell you what to do. I'm going to offer this to you, but I'm not going to say that this is the ultimate thing.
Yeah.
With the exception of love. Actually, I'll probably die on that. I'll die on that cross.
Love and the Hermetic principles.
Yeah. But maybe that's not someone else's truth.
Yeah.
But for me, that's fundamental truth. And I'm going to move in that way as best as I can. And that teaching, you never know who it affects. And so I think that's really what this collective is here to offer, is this ability to witness others in their truth. And by virtue of engaging with them in that way, latent facets of oneself may be revealed.